Welcome to Books for Success. Today, we're delving into the wisdom within Capitalist Realism by Mark Fisher. Capitalist Realism, 2009, offers an analysis of how contemporary society is shaped and constrained by capitalist ideology. You'll explore the concept of capitalist realism, the pervasive sense that no alternative to capitalism is possible. This influential work challenges you to consider the psychological and cultural impacts of living under such a dominant economic system, prompting a re-evaluation of societal structures and personal beliefs. Who's it for? Anyone feeling let down by our current social or economic systems. Activists seeking insights on capitalist influence in society. Students of political theory or philosophy. Before we begin, subscribe and ring the bell for notifications if you want to keep receiving the knowledge of book summaries about health, wealth, love, psychology, and much more. Don't be shy about dropping your book suggestions for us to summarize. Also, you can use this video as an audiobook summary. Let's grow and succeed together. What's in it for me? Discover transformative insights into capitalism's impact on life and society. Have you ever stopped to consider how deeply the economic and cultural system of capitalism influences your life? How it shapes not only your everyday actions and decisions, but also your future dreams and aspirations? These questions were central to the work of the late Mark Fisher. His influential ideas on capitalism have sparked a wave of new thinking, challenging conventional perspectives and inspiring a generation to look at the world differently. In this summary, we'll explore some of these ideas to uncover the big picture of how capitalist structures shape our reality. You'll learn about the profound psychological and cultural effects of living in a capitalist-dominated world, and hopefully get empowered to envision and strive for a future that transcends the limitations of the present. Envisioning a world beyond capitalism. In an age where the contours of our world are increasingly defined by the unyielding presence of capitalism, it's crucial to understand how this economic and cultural system shapes our perceptions, actions, and even our aspirations. This exploration isn't just an academic exercise. It pierces the very heart of our collective experience, questioning the foundations of our societal norms and the possibilities of our future. Imagine a world where the inevitability of capitalism is so deeply ingrained in our consciousness that contemplating an alternative seems not just impractical, but inconceivable. This is the essence of capitalist realism, a concept that encapsulates the overwhelming sense that capitalism is not only the ubiquitous system of our times, but that it's become the only conceivable reality for the future. It's a mindset where envisioning the end of the world seems more feasible than picturing the end of capitalism. In other words, the pervasive nature of capitalism is so all-encompassing that it's easier to imagine a catastrophic end to life as we know it than a shift away from this economic system. The 2006 film Children of Men vividly illustrates this notion. Set in a dystopian future, it presents a society that, despite being on the brink of collapse due to mass sterility and societal breakdown, continues to operate under the unchallenged norms of capitalism. The preservation of cultural relics and the persistence of luxury amid chaos encapsulate the absurdity of valuing capitalistic structures over human regeneration and societal well-being. In this world, the idea of a post-capitalist society isn't just unexplored, it's unthinkable. This portrayal is a narrative device, but it reflects a broader cultural phenomenon. The normalization of capitalist structures, even in scenarios of extreme societal distress such as widespread poverty, environmental collapse, or social upheaval, underscores how deeply embedded capitalist ideology is in our consciousness. In these dire situations, the prevailing capitalist framework remains unchallenged, further emphasizing its ingrained presence in our way of life. Capitalist realism also manifests in the transformation of culture into commodities, a trend that has notably intensified in the latter half of the 20th century with the expansion of global capitalism. Cultural artifacts, whether they're works of art, music, or literature, are increasingly valued not for their intrinsic qualities or the meaning they convey but primarily for their market value. This shift marks a profound change in our relationship with cultural objects. Where these artifacts were once engaged with as part of a living tradition, they're now often interacted with as mere objects of trade. Their worth measured in terms of their commercial potential rather than their cultural significance. The concept of capitalist realism goes beyond the observation that capitalism is the dominant economic system. It delves into the psychological and cultural impacts of living in a world where capitalist ideology is so pervasive that it shapes our very ability to imagine alternative realities. In confronting this reality, we face not only a challenge against the economic and political structures of capitalism but also against the limitations it imposes on our imagination. The task ahead is to break free from the mental confines of capitalist realism, and to work toward alternatives that are not just variations of our current reality, but truly different ways of organizing society and valuing human existence. Breaking free from reflexive impotence. Building on the exploration of capitalist realism's grip on our collective imagination, we now delve deeper into a phenomenon that's resonating with today's youth: reflexive impotence. This isn't merely about inaction or passive acceptance of what is. It's about a deep-seated belief in the futility of action, a conviction that significant change is an unrealistic fantasy. You might blame this mindset on ignorance or indifference, but in reality, young people are overwhelmed by the obstacles to meaningful change. As a result, they're feeling more powerless than ever. But this sense of reflexive impotence is more than a feeling; it manifests in tangible realities. It's visible in the growing mental health crises among the young, with depression and learning difficulties alarmingly common. Discussions around these issues often focus solely on the individual's problems, neglecting the larger societal structures contributing to these conditions. This focus on individual issues reinforces a sense of helplessness, making collective action or societal change appear even more unattainable. The issue intensifies with the transition from traditional, rule-oriented societies to what the philosopher Gilles Deleuze calls societies of control. In these societies, distinctions between institutions like schools, workplaces, and leisure blur, creating a seamless loop of consumption and perpetual self-improvement that further binds individuals to capitalist ideology. This is especially pronounced in education, where students are increasingly seen as consumers rather than learners. This consumer-oriented approach means students are often engaged in accumulating credentials and focusing on grades as tangible products of their education, rather than deeply engaging with the material they're supposed to learn. More meaningful engagement with the world would involve students actively participating in learning processes that encourage critical thinking, creativity, and a deeper understanding of the subject matter instead of simply striving for high scores or degrees as ends in themselves. On top of that, the legal frameworks and societal structures that could traditionally mobilize action and bring about change are now imbued with a sense of indefinite postponement. An example of this in real life could be the bureaucratic processes in government or corporate environments, where decision-making is constantly deferred through endless meetings, consultations, and reviews, leading to a lack of concrete action or change. This leads to a state of limbo, where despite the appearance of activity, there is little actual progress. Action is deferred due to an overemphasis on process and risk avoidance rather than on outcomes or results. This state of affairs breeds a culture of internal policing, where individuals are complicit in their own control, regulating their own behavior to conform to these endless processes and norms, often at the expense of taking initiative or creative problem-solving. This, of course, further dampens any sparks of resistance or change. As we move forward, it's vital to consider how we can overcome the widespread sense of powerlessness that many young people feel. How can we challenge the prevailing trend of seeking quick satisfaction through consumerism, social media validation, or mindless entertainment? What new forms of resistance and innovative ways of thinking are necessary to break away from this cycle of instant gratification and complacency, which is so characteristic of our times? These questions aren't just a matter for theoretical debate. They're an urgent call to action. We must find practical and effective ways to reimagine and actively shape a future that moves beyond the limiting boundaries of our current capitalist framework, fostering a culture that values deeper, more meaningful experiences and connections. The paradox of market Stalinism? We now turn our attention to a phenomenon that epitomizes the paradoxical nature of contemporary economic systems: market Stalinism. This term is a reflection of the intricate and often contradictory forces at play in our societies, forces that shape both the institutions we interact with and our very perceptions of efficiency and productivity. Market Stalinism, which might seem oxymoronic at first glance, aptly describes a situation where the market's invisible hand is coupled with an iron fist of administrative control and surveillance. This combination results in an environment where the very forces that are supposed to liberate the market and enhance productivity end up creating new forms of bureaucracy that stifle innovation and creativity. This scenario is vividly portrayed in Mike Judge's film Office Space, which humorously yet incisively depicts the suffocating nature of the modern corporate setting. In this environment, workers find themselves inundated with redundant memos and trivial administrative tasks that serve more to demonstrate compliance with procedures than to contribute to any meaningful productivity. In an era often touted for its neoliberal policies like deregulation, privatization, and the emphasis on free market competition, the reality is a growing complexity and expansion of bureaucratic processes. The relentless push for ongoing evaluations, financial audits, and the measurement of performance through various metrics has given rise to a convoluted administrative maze. In seeking to streamline and optimize, these neoliberal approaches have ironically led to the very inefficiency they aim to eliminate. The impact of this phenomenon is not confined to the corporate world alone. It permeates various sectors, including education and public services, where teachers and other professionals are increasingly burdened by the need to satisfy an ever-growing array of performance indicators and targets. These measures, ostensibly designed to improve standards and accountability, often end up diverting resources and attention away from the core activities they're meant to enhance. In educational settings, for instance, the focus shifts from the actual teaching and learning process to the production and management of data that satisfies bureaucratic requirements. This scenario leads to what can be described as a culture of bureaucratic anti-production, where the primary output is not goods or services but an endless stream of data and documentation that serves to feed the bureaucratic machine. This culture not only stifles creativity and innovation but also demoralizes those caught in its web, leading to a sense of futility and disengagement. It represents a significant departure from the ideals of efficiency and effectiveness that are often touted as the hallmarks of market economies. As we ponder this scenario, we should ask ourselves, how can we navigate and reshape these structures to create environments that truly enhance human potential and societal well-being? What new paradigms and approaches are needed to break free from the constraints of bureaucratic anti-production and realize the promise of a more dynamic, responsive, and human-centered system? The Marxist Supernanny. In the final phase of our exploration of capitalist realism, we encounter an intriguing idea: the Marxist supernanny. This idea, emerging from the insightful observations of modern societal and familial structures, offers a critical lens to examine authority and guidance in today's capitalist context. At its core, the Marxist supernanny represents a challenge to the prevailing norms in parenting and education. It's a call for reintroducing structured authority and discipline in a landscape increasingly defined by a hands-off, pleasure-centric approach. Permissive hedonism, a key aspect of this discussion, refers to a cultural tendency where indulgence in personal desires and the pursuit of pleasure aren't just allowed but actively promoted. This cultural shift often results in a relaxed stance toward discipline and authority, particularly evident in parenting and educational settings. In such environments, the traditional roles of authority figures are weakened, with a general reluctance to set boundaries or enforce rules, based on the belief that unrestrained freedom and the satisfaction of every whim are inherently positive. The Marxist supernanny steps in as a conceptual response to these modern dynamics. Originating from the observation of current parenting trends and popularized by television shows like Supernanny, this concept critiques the effects of overly lenient, pleasure-focused parenting. It points out that the issue lies not with the children, who are naturally inclined toward seeking pleasure, but with parents who, in their quest for a conflict-free life, shirk from their responsibility to impose necessary limits and maintain order. This reflects a broader societal pattern where the pursuit of individual gratification is often prioritized over collective well-being and structured discipline. The Marxist perspective on this issue would shift the focus from individual family units to the broader societal and structural factors that contribute to these dynamics. It'd argue that the crisis in parental authority is symptomatic of a larger problem within capitalist societies, where the erosion of traditional structures and values has led to a general sense of disorientation and lack of guidance. This isn't about nostalgia for authoritarianism, It's a call to critically assess the roles and functions of authority and guidance in our society. The Marxist supernanny also challenges the notion that individuals always know what's best for themselves. It proposes that, just as children may not always understand their own long-term interests, adults too can be misguided by immediate gratifications and short-term desires. The idea of the Marxist supernanny is that people should be guided and educated, not through authoritarian imposition, but through an understanding of the deeper needs and potentials of individuals and society. This leads us to consider how we can move beyond a culture of passive acceptance and toward one of active engagement and education. The role of media, educators, and other cultural producers becomes crucial in this context. They have the potential to challenge the status quo, to offer alternatives to the dominant hedonistic narrative, and to cultivate a culture that values critical thinking, collective responsibility, and long-term well-being over immediate gratification. This exploration opens up possibilities for a more conscious and intentional approach to living and coexisting in our complex, rapidly evolving world. Final words. Our world, deeply entrenched in capitalist realism, shapes our perceptions and limits our ability to envision alternatives. This pervasive influence extends from societal structures to cultural artifacts, where market value overrides intrinsic qualities. As a result, the capital landscape has created a shift in societal norms, where youths are marked by a sense of powerlessness and a focus on immediate gratification. The paradox of market Stalinism and bureaucratic anti-production highlights how administrative control stifles creativity and productivity. The concept of the Marxist supernanny also emerges, advocating for a re-evaluation of authority and discipline in the face of permissive hedonism. Our task now is to move beyond the critique of contemporary societal trends, to reimagine our approach to authority, responsibility, and collective well-being in a capitalist-dominated world. Thanks for being part of our insightful voyage. If our summary piqued your interest, we encourage you to dive into the complete book for a deeper understanding. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe for more content if you're new here, and share it with others who might find it valuable. Keep on reading, discovering, and advancing until our next adventure.